Today, I'm going to bring you along as I pack for my upcoming Patagonia trip at the end of the month. What is making it into a kind of tight weight constraint photo kit. I'm also going to give a preview of my upcoming February Kauai workshop and show you why I think that island is so special that you should really consider joining me. All right, Hudson here. Thanks to everybody who has been liking, subscribing, and following this channel. I really appreciate the viewership growth. You know, while I was off on my workshop in Moab, I know we passed 10,000 subscribers, and I really want to thank everybody for supporting this video series. It really means a ton to me. So with that out of the way, this week I'm going to take you through, I've pretty much determined what photo gear I'm taking to Patagonia. It's a little bit of a complicated packing trip because this workshop, we're also going to be doing an overnight trip to one of my favorite locations in Patagonia, Lago Torre, at the base of the famed peak Cerro Torre. So I'm going to be packing tents, stoves, a whole bunch of camping gear. And so the photo gear has to be a little bit tight just to be able to get everything into the bags that I'm bringing with me on the plane. Also to fit everything in the van with all the workshop students. We're gonna have a couple of vans. My good friend David Archer is gonna be helping lead this workshop. We got an awesome group of people coming. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about the Kauai workshop that we just launched. We've launched the first two workshops for 2020, which are Cuba and Patagonia. There's been so much demand for Cuba that I actually opened up a second workshop. Kauai's been filling a little bit more slowly, maybe just because Cuba seems so exotic. And I want to make my little pitch for why I think if you haven't done a photo workshop on the island of Kauai, you should really, really consider it. I've been going to Kauai since I was just a kid. I have a really strong family connection to that island. And for me, going there not only recharges my personal batteries, it's just this really powerful place, but it also tends to kind of reawaken a lot of my creative energy. If I'm running down a bit low, going there, there's so much to see, so much to photograph, and it's just such a spectacular example of a Pacific island. So I'm going to run through some photos, talk about some of my family connections with that place, and talk about some of the things that we're going to do in the workshop. It's a really exciting workshop. We're even going to do a doors-off helicopter tour of the island. There's going to be spectacular beaches, rocky coastline, lighthouses, wildlife, canyons, waterfalls. It's all there. So I'm going to jump in, do a little bit of a slideshow about that, talk about it. Then I'll come back and I'll show you everything that's making it into the bag for Patagonia. And just a little disclaimer, if you hear construction sounds, there's some pavers going in outside my studio, so there's potential for sawing and banging and a little bit of work stuff that just can't be avoided this time around. So my apologies in advance if some of those construction sounds cut into this video. All right, so I know I talk a lot about this location or that location or literally one of my favorite on the earth, but you know, Kauai really truly is this place that I cannot help being excited about going back to again and again and again and again and again. I really don't know how many times I've been there. I have this really strong family connection to the place, and I've been going there since I was a kid. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but you know, every time I go, it's different. The sky is often just incredibly dramatic. The landscape is just beautiful. The ridges are so eroded. There's spectacular white sand beaches. There's wild, rocky parts of the coastline. There's a whole side of the island that's just too rugged and wild to even build any roads or anything on that Nepali coast. We'll talk about that in a second. So this workshop, I'm really stoked to take a group of people and share this just really special piece of Hawaii. It's an island that, while there's been some tourism development, there's been a whole lot less than most of the other Hawaiian islands, particularly on its north shore, from Princeville all the way through to the end of the road at Ke'e Beach. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So Kauai, of all the majorly inhabited islands of Kauai, Kauai is the oldest. You know, there's a hot spot in the Earth's mantle, and as the Pacific plate moves across it, it sort of burns through and creates a new volcano as the plate moves across the top of that hot spot. And so these islands form, and the big island of Kauai is the newest one that's up above the surface. It's the largest mountain on Earth measured from the sea floor, and it's the least eroded. There aren't very many really beautiful sandy beaches on that island. You don't have these sculpted ridges the way you have on Kauai. When you're on Kauai, some of the results of that erosion are just gorgeous sand beaches that line a whole bunch of the island, along with these just beautiful ridges and a canyon, Waimea Canyon, that Mark Twain dubbed the Grand Canyon of the Pacific. You know, there's been enough time that the water has eroded this just spectacular canyon through the island, and we can drive right along the edge and go to viewpoints and photograph that. Plus, we'll be doing a doors-off helicopter trip over the island and some of its wilder parts and waterfalls, and we'll, I'm sure, fly through this canyon, which is really spectacular. And that canyon kind of comes out, and there's a place where you can drive up to the top and look down into the Kalalau Valley. This is one of the last places that Native Hawaiians inhabited. Traditionally, it's really remote. It's the end of a long trail. This workshop, we won't hike that trail, but that's one of the most spectacular hikes on the planet. Terminates at the beach down below here. You can't quite see, but it's all the way along sort of the west side of the island that's wild, and it's an 11-mile, really arduous trail into this spectacular beach that's really secluded. The island has gorgeous waterfalls and, of course, the sandy beaches, and it's got crazy rocky bits of coastline. This is looking down that Nepali coast from the north, sort of the other side. So, you know, here's the view out of Waimea Canyon looking at the southern end of the Nepali coast. Here's the wetter northern end at Ka Beach, which is a spot we'll go for sunset. It's on sort of that western side of the island, and it's just beautiful with the tide pools and rocks and waves rolling in there. So, you know, my general description of Kauai is that it's just one of the most wild of the Hawaiian islands that you can go to. It's the most beautiful, it's the most lush, and it has the best beaches and erosional landforms. So I've been going there since I was a kid because my grandmother, Georgia Henry, who is just the coolest, sort of most adventuresome and fun woman, spent a bunch of the time in the 70s, maybe even the late 60s, I can't remember exactly, but in the 70s and 80s, managing a resort on the north shore of Kauai, the last actual resort before the end of the road at Ka Beach, called the Hanalei Colony Resort. And it actually is the only resort on the island where there are sort of little beachside condos that you can stay. This is a photo of Stacy kiteboarding right off the beach there at the Hanalei Colony Resort. And I grew up as a kid going to Kauai with my Nana. She had to be there every year and see her friends, even after she moved back home to be closer to the grandchildren. And this place was just a part of her. She traveled the world. She traveled to New Zealand and Mexico and South America and Europe, and she'd had a travel bug almost as bad as I do. But she had to go back to Kauai every year. And so I have, you know, all these family memories, and I've brought my own kids there over and over again just because it's such a special place. It was one of Pike's first big trips was going to Kauai. And, you know, hiking the trails, exploring the coasts. And when Nana passed away a few years ago, we put her ashes in the bay right there on the north shore of Kauai, just off the resort where she stayed. And so, you know, I have a really special connection to this place. I love to go back, spend time with this island, photograph it, kiteboard in the bay where Nana's ashes are. And we'll be staying on the North Shore in a place called Princeville. You can actually see Princeville in the background of this photo of Stacy, my wife, kiteboarding here. And there's a lot of homes, golf courses, resort hotels, things like that. I'm actually renting a really beautiful home there. I believe it's 5 bedrooms and 4 baths. That's my family's going to stay with me. We'll do our thing in Kauai, and then the workshop will start as they take off. And there's room for 3 workshop participants to stay with my good buddy David Archer that's helping me run this workshop. And in that house, other people will have to find accommodations, whether it's an Airbnb like the house that we've got, or one of the hotels in Princeville, or one of the other hotels around there. but it's a perfect location to explore everything that Kauai has to offer, from its beaches to the Grand Canyon of the Pacific Waimea Canyon. We'll go down, we'll photograph this overlook into Kalalau Valley at sunset. We'll be very close to this spectacular lighthouse, Kilauea Lighthouse, which also has a whole bunch of blue-footed boobies that live right there, so we can photograph the seabirds and photograph the lighthouse at dawn. And it's also, that's near the Maelstrom, which is this really cool blowhole that's sort of like Thor's Well on the Oregon coast. It's a really neat erosional feature that will time a high tide and photograph kind of boiling like a waterfall on the reef. And of course, we'll go out to Ka Beach and photograph sunset on that spectacular wild west side of the island. It's one of my favorite places to photograph sunset, and I've been there a ton of times, and it's never been the same twice. So again, we'll be staying in Princeville. Princeville has spectacular views. It's right near Hanalei Bay, where there's great surfing in the cool little town of Hanalei. We'll go to the Princeville Resort, where it's a wonderful place to have drinks, watch sunset, photograph sunset. One of the things I love on Kauai, if things are calm, there's just exploring the beaches and places like Queen's Bath, which is a big tide pool you can actually swim in. If the surf is big, which it often is at the time of year we're going to be there, the waves are just spectacular to photograph, particularly in good light. And sometimes they get really big and there's cool places. This is actually right on Princeville at the place Queen's Bath at a day you would not want to be swimming in there. But anyway, Kauai to me is this place where I go to just recharge my batteries, to both personally and creatively. It is a special place. It's like a piece of old Hawaii. It's less developed. It's a ton of fun. It's very special to me, and I hope that you'll consider joining me there for this workshop in February. Again, it's February 21st. All right, so I think you can see why this workshop in Kauai is going to be really special. We've got a few people already signed up. We're actually staying in an amazingly pimp house in Princeville on the North Shore, right in the midst of everything, and there are a couple of slots remaining in that house with me. There's a whole bunch of bedrooms and bathrooms. We've got a couple of workshop attendees already staying in it. My family's going to stay the week ahead of the workshop, take off, and then the workshop commences. David and I are staying there, kind of using it as a central hub and classroom, and people can stay with us. So that workshop's going to be super special. I hope you'll sign up. There's a link in the video description. Just click show more or run to hudsonhenry.com. Go to photo training workshops. You'll see it right there. Again, it starts on February 21st, 2020. Okay, so what is making it into my bag for Patagonia? I'm gonna start sort of from the ground up. Everybody knows I'm kind of a camera support geek. Well, of course, I'm taking my big 7-foot tall Gitzo carbon fiber tripod with my Manfrotto 500AH fluid head and the Kirk bridge. But I want a second tripod to be able to do time lapse or some video at the same time as I'm photographing. So I'm also bringing my more lightweight, what I consider kind of my travel Benro tripod with the Benro fluid head. It's a couple pounds lighter. I think that this is a little less than 5 pounds total. This one's 7 pounds total. I know it looks big and heavy. Whenever my workshop crew picks these up, they're always like, wow, it's not as heavy as I thought. So yes, I'm bringing 2 big tripods. They both will fit in one tripod bag if I interweave them correctly, and I'll put them in one of those big Eagle or LL Bean rolling duffels that I advocate packing your tripod into, along with a bunch of stuff sacks full of clothes and things like that, soft goods to just pack around that tripod setup. I am not bringing any DSLRs on this trip. I really, truly have just made that full-on jump into mirrorless, and the mirrorless are working really well for me for wildlife and action, as long as I don't need to fire off, gajillions of frames. Now, there's going to be opportunities to photograph condor and other beautiful birds like caracara down there. There's going to be guanaco. There's hopefully going to be guanaco babies. It's spring in Patagonia. There's Patagonian fox. There's swans. There's tons and tons of wildlife to photograph there. And I am bringing my new Nikon 500 PF, the ultra lightweight hand-holdable Nikon 500 5.6. I'm also bringing its sibling, the 300 f4, and I'm bringing a couple of Nikon FTZ adapters. I'm shooting this video right now with my Z6 with the 24 to 70 f4 lens. That will be coming with me the Z7, which here has my 14-30 lenses coming with me. I'll also bring the Z lens, the 50-1.8, just for running around town or evening shoots where it's low lit and I want that really wide aperture to have nice low ISO and hand holdable shutter speeds in, say, the towns and cities that we're in Chile and Argentina. I'm also going to bring the 70-200. This is the FLED, the newest 70-200 f-mount lens. Works great with the FTZ adapter on either of those camera bodies, as well as a 1.4 teleconverter. So, if you think about it, that's everything from 30 to 500. I'm bringing both the 500 to the 300 and the 70-200 because there are a lot of people coming on the trip that are Nikon shooters, and we'll be able to share those lenses around. If there's some great wildlife, I can let other people in the workshop use the 500 or the 300 or the 70-200. And this 1.4 teleconverter works great with all of those lenses, just extending those ranges. I'm also bringing a 14 millimeter, the Rokinon 2.4 special, the little bit higher quality 14 millimeter ultra wide aperture f-mount lens, and that I'll use through an FTZ adapter for Milky Way work. I'm leaving the 14-24 lens behind. This is just a great lens for star work, and it's hard for me to leave behind because there's dark, beautiful star nights in Patagonia. We'll even have an opportunity for Milky Way. It'll be low, but it's just like spring here. I'm bringing the 20 millimeter 1.8 Nikon f-mount lens just because it does such a spectacular sunstar, and if there's a situation where I want to capture a sunstar, this is my sunstar lens of choice. So those are a couple specialty lenses. I also, I'm going to look at weight as I finally pack this whole thing together, but I'm probably going to bring my little Voigtlander 10 millimeter f5.6. It's the widest angle rectilinear full frame lens ever made so far. And it works really great on the Z cameras with this little Tech Art adapter from F-mount to Nikon Z mount. So, I'll be bringing that along just to get even wider than 14 millimeters. That's basically the optics. Of course, I'll bring a full complement of neutral density filters. I've got a 10-stop, 6-stop, and a 4-stop neutral density filter, as well as a good polarizer. These are Hoya HD3 and Hoya Solus filters. I got a few other filters in here that are it's actually polarizers and neutral density filters that are fitted to specific lenses like the 14 or the 24-70 that I carry handheld around a lot on my Z7 just as a knock-around lens. Also, this color enhancing filter just for star work in case there's any light pollution like around El Chaltán. It kind of cuts that sodium vapor light out of the scene, that kind of greenish haze on the horizon. Bringing, of course, a ton of XQD cards. These cameras only take XQD cards, so I'm bringing a full complement of 128 gigabyte XQD cards. I'm bringing my advanced panoramic setup, so I've got the whole setup to get up and be able to do multiple row panoramas and complex panoramas with near and far elements. Ton of batteries, because who knows, there'll be times where we won't have enough time to charge or we'll be working at night, so I'm going to bring 8 Nikon batteries. One great thing with the Nikon system is they haven't changed batteries since, I don't know, like the D750 or the D700 even. So all the Z cameras and all the older cameras work with the same batteries. I'm also bringing a Sony 70-200 f4 lens for one of my workshop students that has the Sony that doesn't have this lens. This is actually trivia. This is an old lens of Matt Kloskowski's, my good buddy. Sold it to me when he got the G Master series for his Sonys. I'm bringing a couple Nikon battery chargers, and I'm going to put the critical part of this kit in my big Think Tank International rolling bag, just so that I can roll it on the plane so I don't have to have everything on my back through the airports. As I'm getting a little bit older and wiser, I'm realizing it's nice to have a rolling bag with my computer bag slung on it with all my gear in. This is a really beautifully built, holds a ton of stuff, easily configurable camera bag that'll also hold a laptop, and you can just roll through the airport nicely. I'll have my little f-stop Naveen holster, which extends to be able to, if you undo these clips, it gets longer and you can put a 70-200 in it, or it's really nice with the 24-70 collapsed like this and room for a spare battery and microfiber. I'm gonna have a bunch of AA batteries for this and that, like walkie-talkies, two-way radio, since we'll have 2 vans and we're traveling through a region where there's often not good cell service. Of course, headlamp, all those kinds of things that you normally have. I've been carrying a gray tag color checker around with me a lot just to be able to shoot a neutral white balance card really easily and make sure that I get the white balance nailed when I get back. Cleaning kit, including everything I need to clean, compact, and full frame sensors, so that I've got that for the workshop crew, and a sensor loop and a gel stick, and lots of clean microfiber cloths, lens cleaning solution. I've got a fun little kit from LumeCube that's really the only lighting I'm taking. I'm not going to take any strobes. This isn't really a portrait workshop. I'm going to be taking a couple of these really cool new LumeCube panel lights. They put out a great light, and we used them with great effect in the workshop last month in arches, lighting up the inside of double arch and delicate arch and balanced rock. And we actually had all the people that were out doing Milky Way shooting kind of cheering us on because we lit them so evenly that they were perfectly balanced for long exposures of the Milky Way. As well as some new LumeCube 2s, which also do a real nice low light setting. I've got a bunch of light modifiers for these in here. Warming gels, diffusion, even some little scrims and things in there. So a pretty cool kit. I think that's basically what's coming. I'm going to bring a GoPro along so I can get some footage of just moving around in the workshop. And of course, I'll be filming and doing some approaching the scene work while I'm there. So it's not a small kit, but I am having to make some hard decisions, like leaving the 14 to 24 f-mount lens behind. I'm quite happy with this much lighter 14 to 30 for everything but star work. And this Rokinon has less chromatic aberration, in particular coma in the corners, and is much lighter than the 14 to 24. So this 14 millimeter Rokinon is kind of leading me to think I might get rid of that 14 to 24. The hardest lens I've decided to leave behind is the 105 millimeter 1.4 portrait lens. I just love that lens. I shoot with it a lot, but I am having to pare it down a little bit. So next up, I'm going to be packing up 3 tents, a couple of stoves, a bunch of pots, everything I need to take a whole crew out overnight in the wilds of Patagonia. This is going to be an awesome trip. I'm really excited for it. While I'm gone, there's going to be a couple approaching the scenes that were shot in the Tetons and Moab from that time I was just on the road, and I'll be producing some more while I'm in Patagonia. I had a question from someone about whether or not I'm going to check out the new Nikon Z50. That's the intro level. It's kind of probably positioned as a little bit of a prosumer APS-C camera that they just came out with. And they've got some non-S, they're the same Z-mount lenses, but they're not the S-line professional series lenses coming with it. And I'm not going to speculate a whole bunch about that camera. It's not out yet. There's plenty of videos and sites where people will tell you everything that they've read about it. You can read that for yourself. But you can know, I did pre-order one, and I'm going to check it out, and I'll let you know what I think about it when I get it. The only, I'm not going to keep it for myself, but I do have people constantly asking me, I have this much money to spend, what camera should I get? Well, I'm going to see if that becomes a camera that I recommend. I've often recommended people get the Sony a6500. We'll see what I think of this one. It might be competitive in there, and it's fun that it shares all these lenses. So I'll check it out. If I really don't like it, I'll send it back. If I do like it, I'll tell you why. Either way, I'll tell you why. Oh, one thing I completely forgot is the pack I'm taking. So I have a number of photo backpacks. My favorite are the f-stop backpacks because they have such easy access and really good harness systems on them. I've been mostly lately using a brand new f-stop Talopa that as I connected with them and worked on, and became an ambassador for them, I picked up. But I'm going to actually take my older Suka with me to Patagonia just because it's a little bit bigger. I'm going to take the Suka and I'm putting the medium slope system in it. So it's still kind of a perfect setup for bringing kind of my trinity of lenses with the Z camera body in there. I don't need a whole bunch of room for the camera gear, any extra room for that, but what I do need is room for tents, for fuel, for the stove, for the stoves, for all the stuff that we need for an overnight trip. So the Suka is going to be my bag of choice on this one, just because it's a little bigger, it can carry a little bit more stuff. So that's kind of the last bit of kit going into Patagonia. The way that I'll pack it is I'll get all the most critical stuff, including chargers, batteries, memory cards, the critical lenses and bodies into this bag. What I can't fit in this bag, I'll really carefully pack in the Suka, and I'll put it in that big LL Bean rolling duffel that also has my tripod and clothes and stuff sacks, and so everything's padded and carefully packed in there. All right, that's it. See you next week.